And now, coming to you live from the City of Angels, Los Angeles, California, it's the Sheena Metal Experience with your host, Sheena Metal, only on KGRA Digital Broadcasting.
Hi, and welcome to the Sheena Metal Experience on KGRA Digital Broadcast Network. I'm your host, Sheena Metal. I am a psychic medium. I'm an energetic healer. I'm an interfaith minister. I'm a 29-year talk radio host in Los Angeles and beyond. I'm a creative and a performing artist and a paranormal survivor. And I come to you live from my home in Southern California every Friday at 3 o'clock Pacific time. This show is about spirituality. It's about creativity. It's about humanity. It's about passion. It's about service. It's about becoming and then maintaining being your best you in this big, beautiful world, and then inspiring others to do the same. And it may be my show. It is the Sheena Metal Experience, after all. But that doesn't mean it's not always and forever your experience. My guest today is returning to the show. He's been a guest on many of my shows. He has been a paranormal expert and expert on all things outside of the box. Worked on many spirit investigations, done many television shows. He is a priest and one of my favorite, maybe my favorite priest. Is it safe to say that? And a good New England boy. So you got to love that. Please welcome to the show, the wonderful Father Bob Bailey is here. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing very well, Sheena. It's great to see you, talk to you again.
It's good to have you here.
Thanks.
It's always good to have another New Englander here. But I'll start out by asking you a very, very serious question, because I like to start serious right away. So my best friend is from Massachusetts, and I'm from Connecticut. And she claims that Connecticut is not really New England. Can you weigh in on that? Because I think Connecticut is New England.
It's absolutely New England.
Yeah, what is with the Massachusetts people that they think they own?
Well, because you're so close to New York, I guess they feel you're annexed to them.
Right. No, I get it. And I'm from New Haven, which I consider to be New England, but also to be a suburb of New York in a way. So I get it. I just find it funny that the Massachusetts people don't ever want to give me credit for being from New England.
But there's so much New Englandese about Connecticut.
Oh my God, yes. Right? Absolutely.
And history.
Yes. And paranormal history. Did you grow up? Where did you grow up?
In Rhode Island.
Okay, so you've been in Rhode Island your whole life, pretty much.
I have been. Yep.
What do you think it is about that region of the country that there's such an interesting kind of paranormal activity there? I mean, obviously there's paranormal activity everywhere. But what is it about New England? There's a particular kind of gothic haunting, right? And a beat
there is
for UFOs in New England.
Yeah, there seems to be, and I don't know if it's just the area, the longer history of the area. That there are the inhabitants who were here before.
Yeah.
As far as the ancestors of this place, I don't know, except that there was a lot of tragedy here, a lot of history. I don't know. It's just even in Rhode Island, just like up in the northern part of the state, that's a lot of hauntings.
Yeah.
And as opposed to the rest of the state. But
right. Yeah.
It's a question though. But when you think haunting, you kind of in America, you kind of think of New England. I think.
Yeah.
Maybe because of Salem, but.
Right. Well, and maybe that's part of it that I have found in my life, and I could be wrong, and feel free to disagree with me, that whenever there is the kind of religious zealousness that the Puritans had, there's a certain amount of negativity that travels with that. You know,
yeah, I would think so.
It's supposed to be God, but it's done in such a negative way, which for me is so opposite than any God I've ever felt, any calling I've ever had has not been, God has not been angry and screaming at me and telling me to condemn others. But I think like in that those Puritan colonies, right? Salem is a great example, Father Bob. There was a lot of darkness there. And I think with
Yeah.
that darkness comes maybe that residual darkness energy, however many hundreds of years later, is still sort of hanging around that area a little bit.
Oh yeah, and I think you really hit on it that the Puritan influence in New England, went all through New England,
Yeah.
and so that that could have a lot to do with it. And then there was also a lot of Native American um, folklore and stuff of things that happen. Like in Rhode Island, they have a place called Nine Men's Misery, and we have the King Philip's War, between the Native Americans and the colonists, and so there's a lot of energy from there too, that violence.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the natives, we talk a lot about Indian burial grounds and the natives protecting their land, but I think there were instances when the colonists came and, at knife point and gunpoint chased them off their land. I mean, I don't really believe in curses and hexes, but I do think the natives put a little juju in the land, like, you want our land? Okay, take it. Here you go.
Yeah.
And there are certain areas that are very haunted and sometimes very negatively haunted because of that.
Hmm.
Now, is with the work
Yeah.
that you've done in the paranormal in your life and as a priest, I mean, have you seen things and heard things and felt things that you never thought you were going to witness when you first became a priest? I mean, has it expanded sort of your spiritual periphery and what you believe in just based on what you've experienced?
Um, honestly speaking, not really, because I was always into it,
Okay.
even as even when I was younger. It's just I had nobody to share that with because all my friends weren't into all ghosts and all that stuff. But I was always intrigued with that. So I really believed that part of my priesthood would be to engage in warfare.
Oh, wonderful.
So it did expand. It did expand it
Yeah.
in ways that I didn't know how it would, but it wasn't shocking.
Yeah. And I love that you use the term spiritual warfare because we've talked about that when you've done my shows before and when you were here last time. There is there is just a thing, right? Some of us are called in this lifetime into duty, into action, into service, into whatever you want to call it. And we're just sort of here to fight the battle of spiritual warfare and fight for the light.
Hmm.
And it's kind of a thing that you can't really shake. It's part of who you are. It's part of your mission in this lifetime. And it is sometimes it can be a lot on top of your regular life, which is also a lot, right?
Right. I mean, there's been points where, now that I'm disabled and retired, um, and can't go around as much as I did, I don't do as much just locally, really. But um, it's still in you. It's
Yes.
still in you. It's still a part of
Yeah.
And sometimes you got to walk away for a while.
Yeah.
There've been times when it's been so bad, the warfare, the residual of all that. You gotta walk away from it. You can't be immersed 24/7.
No, you're right. You're right. And do you believe what people say that the world is getting more active, that the veil is getting thinner? Or
Yeah,
do you think it's what's
absolutely.
always been here and we just know more about it now?
That could be a little bit of it, but I also believe that yeah, the world is. I mean, there's just hate. There's evil. Look at the stuff happening around the world. I mean, that's some of this stuff is unprecedented altogether. You know what I mean? Not that it hasn't happened before, but just seems to be so much more um, at one time. You know,
Yeah.
so I do think that there's so much negative out there that's just spurring on and welcoming
I
more evil.
I do. I agree.
I do know that they say I'm not an exorcist, But I'm deliverance, I've done deliverances and stuff, but they say that the rise for exorcists, I mean, we have a school of exorcists now in Rome. So
Yeah,
what does that tell you? You know,
right.
so the cases are increasing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you think there's always been a school, but it's just been very secretive? And now it's just something that's a little more well known? Because it's hard for me to believe.
No, no. If there was, it might have been tutored, like you were
Oh,
maybe tutored under
right,
an exorcist.
right.
Um, if you kind of look at the Right with Matt Baglio or the movie The Right,
Yes,
it'll show a little of both. He went to the class, but the school, but he also trained under an exorcist.
right, right,
So, but I think more of that was done. But now, I mean, it's been opened. I think there's one in our country too. There's a couple of weird ones, but I mean, like a legit one.
right.
Um, yeah. Uh, so
Can you explain for my viewers the difference in an exorcism and a deliverance?
correct. Exorcism is rarer. I'm not going to say rare anymore, but rarer.
Right,
Uh, since when someone is totally, totally possessed by a demon, if they're not themselves anymore. They don't possess, their mind, their will, and all of that. It's all of that is possessed by evil. So that's a rare case that's dangerous for the priests doing the exorcism, so that you need permission for that, and there are certain criteria of priests who do that. Anything under that, because there's also other forms of demonic influence. There's temptation, there's infestation, there's oppression,
right.
you know. And so those things, those lesser ones, or house infestations, um, you don't need, permission for that. You should be trained, but you don't need permission for that. And so that's for deliverance. So that's basically it. Anything under demonic possession is would be considered deliverance ministry.
And is a deliverance where you're still separating the human from the demon? It's just that the
Yes,
demon is not as severely
the-
embedded at that point.
exactly. Yes, they are not. Yes, they have not taken over the entire body
Right.
and will. So, yeah, it's that's the difference. Because in oppression and the other forms, they're coming from the outside, attacking, and even infestations from the outside. Uh, Demonic possession comes from the inside,
Right. Right.
so it's much more difficult to separate.
And do you find with the other levels, because I think we think of possession as, the head spinning and the eyeballs
Yeah.
are yellow and the screaming of different languages. But do you think in the I don't want to say lesser, but in I guess lesser in the things that lead up to possession, that there are people who walk around with spirit and or demonic attachments, um, sometimes
Yes.
their whole lives. I mean, sometimes they just carry
Oh yeah.
and it becomes like a weird long-term relationship, and they never get delivered or exercised.
Right. And the Bible does talk about curses. And yes, do I believe in curses? Yes. But do I believe a curse can be it takes power if you believe it too. A lot of it is if you're susceptible, your culture or whatever, to believing in curses, then yes, it's going to be a reality for you. Um, However, if you do have power over curses, but people, a lot of people don't know that. You know,
Yeah, yeah. I think a lot of people don't know that they have power over anything. I think that people believe, and I think sometimes in various religions this is taught, that stay away from the devil, because if the devil gets you, then you're just stuck and screwed. And it's not true. You can keep. It's like the devil's like COVID. You can keep your immune
Mhm.
system up spiritually and avoid things like that from happening. And you can also stay strong. And if you come in contact with something like that, you can kick it out. So it doesn't have to be a lifetime thing by building up the light and strength within you, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. It's not, and that is why, as Catholics, we've had a tradition of spiritual warfare. We have, the whole prayer of Saint Michael, which has
Yes.
been used so many, and we have the longer form of that. We have prayers to ask the intercession of saints who fought with the devil, and so we've always had that uh, built in there. Now we always haven't emphasized it, and that's a problem. But it's been there. It's been there.
Yeah. That's why it's so important that you stay you have to stay your spiritual immune system needs to be strong all the time, and
Right.
that involves oftentimes protecting and keeping strong your emotional immune system and your physiological immune system, because for me they all play in together, right? When I
Absolutely.
envision the three of them, it sort of looks like an Irish triquetro, right? It's like the three circles that form a triangle, and the
Yep.
center part where they overlap is you, and it's
Yep.
all three of them playing in together, and you have to keep all of them strong. Each of them relies on the others to stay strong. So if you're doing something to physically compromise yourself, and that can be anything from not getting enough sleep to eating wrong to abusing substances to not taking care of yourself if you're out in the elements, like whatever it is, then that weakens your physical immune system, and your emotional immune system is trying to keep yourself emotionally balanced and not have people in your life that are draining you or taking from you or draining you, trying to limit the episodes in your life where you're up and down, and focus on trying to keep as even a keel as you can. And then your spiritual immune system, of course, is keeping your energy up, keeping your chi healthy, right? Making sure that nothing is draining you, that you're not draining yourself. And it's
Body, mind, and spirit.
yes, right. Body, mind, and spirit, right? And it can be a lot. It takes a village to keep yourself healthy, but it's
Yeah.
so important, because sometimes clients will come to me and they'll say, well, how do I make sure I never run into anything that's negative? It's like, well, you know, you
Well,
can't be on the earth, because it's the balance
right.
of darkness and light. It's here too. It's like saying, how can I swim in the ocean and never see a shark? The answer
Right.
is no, there is no way. So you're going to run up
That's
against
why I
it.
swim in the ocean.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, you cut out. I'm sorry.
That's why I don't swim in the ocean.
Oh, it's why you don't. Right, exactly. Because
I
they're
ain't running
there.
no shop.
And
No, but I think you have an important point, and even that people don't realize in the Catholic ministry of exorcism that we don't jump into the conclusion that it's demonic right away, because before it can be established, there's criteria that we have to look for, because it could be a psychological thing. There could be other elements that are not spiritual. And if you attack it spiritually when something's psychological or emotional or some kind of a bona fide medical issue, you're not doing any help. In fact, you're doing worse,
right.
you know?
Yes.
So there's always a medical doctor, psychiatrist, like all of those factor in before the ministry of exorcism comes out.
Yes. Yes. It's very smart. And oftentimes at exorcists and at deliverances, is there sometimes also a psychiatrist, psychologist, or medical doctor present at the time?
Mm, there may be, I don't know, but I normally have, when I sense that there's something not spiritual, I always tell them, go to a doctor, or have you been checked out for this? Are you on certain medications? It's tough because it's not what people want to hear,
No.
and that can be frustrating. But I'll do that too, because I'm not doing, if I'm going in and they're saying there's something in the house, and yet they're suffering from paranoia because of It could be something like too much mold, or it could be something like, and I've had that happen
Sure.
when,
Right.
and those waves from electricity. I forgot what it's called now.
Right. Yeah.
But anyways, that can create that.
EMF readings. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that can create like a paranoia too. So, and again, and I saw that happen with a wonderful family that I dealt with, and they were very religious. And I'm thinking they had statues and cross. I was like, I don't, and they pray every night. I'm like, I don't know how this can happen. But what it turned out to, that there were other human issues,
Right.
uh, and once that happened, they felt better.
Right. Right. Nobody wants to
They-
hear, right, that it's just your dryer. The EMF readings
yeah,
are just
no,
coming from your dryer. I think sometimes, and I know we talked
yeah,
about this last time, that it's all become so sensationalized that people
yes,
now think it's great to have something really dark and evil in your house. But having grown
yep,
up in a house like that outside of Baltimore, as you know, I did.
hmm,
I always tell people that's the last thing that you want. That is
yeah,
absolutely the last thing you want, is something in your house that you can't get rid of, and you wind up having to leave because it won't go away. Nobody wants that, and anybody who thinks they do, um, they've never experienced it before, because your home is where you feel safe, and that's where you go to lock the world out. And if you don't feel safe in your home, then there's no way for you to ground, and there's no way for you to build up strength within yourself. If the battle that you fight gets worse when you get home, that's terrible. That's why it's so hard for kids who were abused in their home to recover, because
hmm,
that's supposed to be your safe place, and when that becomes the danger zone, there's a problem. And it's the same thing when you live in a haunted house. And I know I told you I've talked to my friend Andrea Perrin about this, who grew up in the Conjuring
hmm,
house. We did
yep,
I shot an episode of her new show, and we talked about what it was like to grow up in houses like that. Um, and we don't really talk enough. I think we talk a lot about kids who were, physically, emotionally, sexually abused as kids, but we don't talk about the trauma that comes from kids growing up in spiritual crisis. Because when you're in your home and there are scary things happening that you don't understand, and there's no one to talk to, and you feel like you can't go to your parents, or your parents know, but they feel like they can't go to the community. And, it's better now because people can talk about it. But when I was growing up in the 70s, we didn't talk to anybody about it. It was just happening, and we kept it to ourselves. But this many years later, I'm 56 years old, and I sleep with a light on in the TV. So I'm the first one to tell you that that kind of stuff messes you up. And so it's not anything that anybody would willingly invite into their house. And when I'm doing investigations, and I'm sure this has happened to you too, or I'm doing healing work as a psychic medium, and I walk in and I see somebody's, painted the pentagram or called out to the devil, and there's an altar in the closet. They're like, "Oh, we thought it would be fun to call some stuff in." I'm like, "Oh no. Oh no,
yep.
not good."
And I tell them, once they open the doors, it's hard to shut them again.
Yes.
You're gonna find portals. You're gonna do all this, and
Yes.
and it's not worth it for the fun and games. And yeah, and sadly to say, I hope I don't get in trouble by saying this, but some of the paranormal shows have added to that,
Sure.
sensationalizing, and making it look like that they go in, they do investigation, everything gets wrapped up in that 45 minutes,
Right.
and that's
Everything
not reality.
crossed over. Every evil thing goes away. Every ghost
Yep,
crossed over, and everything's okay by the end of the show.
right.
Yeah.
And that's and within and you know as well as I do, it can take weeks and months for investigators to help with
Or
that
never.
stuff.
Sometimes
It's
the
not
things
gonna,
just won't leave.
yeah,
And that's not the
yeah, and that was a good thing, right, right, and that's what I liked about Paranormal State, because we weren't always successful,
yeah.
or it wasn't always neat and clean at the end. It was reality, and again, there was also, we found out that there was a human or other reasons for it, you
Sure.
know. the people that make the shows don't like that.
Right.
They
Right.
they like the sensational, and that's why in some areas they really kind of fake things because the mundane doesn't sell, doesn't attract viewers,
Yeah.
and that's not helpful,
No,
you
it's
know.
true. It's true. I remember there was an episode of Paranormal State that I refer to all the time. First of all, I agree that it was a wonderful show. I'm so glad that I met you because of it. I consider Chip Coffey and Michelle Belanger to be two very dear friends. If
Oh,
it hadn't been for Paranormal State, I wouldn't have met them. But there was an episode that first of all, what I loved about Paranormal State was that you weren't just at, the Stanley Hotel or the Waverly Hills Sanatorium. A lot of Paranormal State was in people's homes. And growing up in a house like that, those are the people that really need you. There's a million people that will go to Penhurst Asylum with you. But to go into somebody's home in the middle of a community where no one's talking about what's going on, to me, that's the real God work that needs to be done. And in this episode that I refer to all the time, this woman had repeated hauntings. She had so many things in her house. And I remember she went and she pulled out this gigantic moving box full of little tiny mini tapes and kind of handed them to the team. And she had been sitting in her kitchen doing EVP sessions over and over. And she had hundreds and hundreds of tapes. She was basically just opening up a hole in the veil and inviting whoever wanted to come in and asking, is there anybody there? Does anybody want to talk to me? Wow. Let me tell you something. I talk about this when I teach all the time. Those are two very loaded sentences. Be very careful when you ask, is anybody there or does anybody want to talk to me? Especially if you're holding a tape recorder, a video camera, you've got a spirit board in front of you, you've got a pendulum. Be super careful about that. Because basically anybody out there, any little spirits or nasty little hitchhikers that have nothing else to do is like, oh, I'm out here and I'd like to talk to you. And
well, that's the whole thing with the Ouija board. They say, oh, we
right.
want to conjure up our Uncle John and it's real Beelzebub. You don't know.
Yes.
That's danger.
Yes. You don't know. I say the most
not worth it.
Toy in the world. People say, oh, BB guns are dangerous. And I'm like, no, what's dangerous is the pink Ouija board that Mattel made for little girls to take to slumber parties. That is probably, so you got a bunch of little girls in puberty and they're at a slumber party and they're opening up a Ouija board while mom's not around and asking God knows what to come in. I mean, that's probably the most dangerous toy ever.
Yeah, and I think now, because like I said, I believe that the world is more charged with more evil now.
Yes.
There's just more being unleashed. So when I was a kid, yeah, we did, but we as innocent. It was a different age. In this age now, you have, for some reason, demons breaking through, and it's much more dangerous. And I don't care how some people think they're experts in Ouija boards. No, you're not. You're not. Because demons lie. They can even lie to psychics. I
Sure.
believe because they have
Oh yeah.
they have greater intelligence than we do.
Right.
So it's
Right.
yeah, it's not a little game. It's not a mindless game anymore.
Well, and I think, and now I might get in trouble, Bob. I think that sometimes psychics don't know how to separate their egos from the work, right? They have their own egos and they want to be thought of as good or famous or accurate, and it's interfering with their ministry. And because of that, it's easy for a spirit to get in and lie to them and tell them something that makes them seem accurate or sensationalized or fabulous. And they will tap into that spirit and just keep going because they want so much to feel like an oracle. And then sometimes they let the spirit in, and it happens. You have to be so protected. I remember when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, I was booking music for a living. And I had run into this psychic who was just not a nice person. And I didn't understand that because my mom was a psychic and she was so great. I didn't understand how a psychic, somebody who was claiming to bring messages in from source, from God, could be so not nice. And there was next to on Sunset Boulevard, I booked this club on Sunset Boulevard, and next to it was this, one of the psychic hand places run by a Roma family that had been there long before this club and is probably still there. And the old guy used to sometimes come out and smoke on the sidewalk. And one day I was sitting outside the club working the door of my show, and he came out, and I walked up to him and I said, "Can I ask you something?" And he said, "Sure." And I said, he thought I was going to ask him for a free reading. He was a little cautious.
Yeah.
I said, "So I just had this run-in with a psychic, and I don't understand, because I was raised by a psychic. I don't understand how somebody can claim to be of God, but yet they can be a terrible person." And he said, "So here's the thing. When you're a psychic and everybody, including you, believes you have some special power, they treat you differently. They treat you like a rock star. And it takes a very grounded person to maintain that lifestyle and be okay. So whatever you do, if you decide to do this work, make sure you constantly ground yourself." And I think that was some of the best advice anybody ever gave me. And it's what I do above all things. And if I get a message that's a little wonky, I stop and think about it. Like, where did that come from? And is there a chance that might not be an accurate message? Because darkness is always looking to bamboozle you. And you have to be careful and make sure you consistently, and I would imagine the same thing when you're a priest, the same thing especially if you're doing exorcism and deliverance where you're getting close to it. You have to always sort of keep yourself in check, right? And make sure that you're staying connected to God, connected to the earth, and connected to you, especially.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, you do have to be prepared, and you have to be as much like for what we would say in the state of grace when you're dealing with that, because you need to be surrounded by grace and light when you're confronting evil. So a lot of times, like with exorcism, they'll do a special kind of a fast beforehand.
Oh, nice.
And most of us would go to the sacrament of confession and reconciliation before, we deal with the case too, just to get all the baggage out.
Yes.
So,
I think it's very smart. I think if you're a person of a spiritual person, a clergy member, you should be doing that all the time. I didn't become a minister until I was, let me get this straight. Okay, it was 2017. So I was 50 the year that I became a minister. And I never thought I would be a minister. It was never anything I thought I would do. I never thought I would do this work out loud. I thought I would just do it secretly. But one day I got literally the calling, and I said, "Oh, okay." And then, so the first year that I had been ordained for about a year, but I got picked up by the church I work for now, for Metropolitan Community Church, and got a gig at the Founders Church doing their interfaith service. And it was like that year, there were so many spiritual attacks. And one day I said to now a very, very good friend of mine, who's our senior pastor, I said, "This is going to sound crazy, but ever since I got this gig doing these services with you, it's like every weird, dark, whatever has come out of the woodwork. And it's been kind of like a hayride." And he laughed and he said, "Oh, darling, welcome to being a minister." And isn't it interesting? And I use this expression, Father Bob, when I teach: the more you step into the light, the more the darkness pays attention. But it's really true, right? When you take further and further steps into your own light service, the darkness is like, "Oh, you think you're going to make a difference? We're going to come around and show you."
Yeah, and in fact, it's in the even in the Catholic spiritual life too, that's an axiom, that's reality. And some of the great saints that we have as examples, the more they came to the light, the more that the darkness saw it as a threat.
Yeah.
So that's with any Christian, any believer. The closer you come to God, then the more you're a threat to the other side.
Yeah. Especially, I think, when you go into action, right? Because a lot of saints, I studied a lot of saints. For a girl who didn't grow up Catholic, I got a whole cabinet here full of saints, and this curio cabinet here that I love. A lot of them even were people that were not believers, and then got a calling and got pulled into service. And sometimes like had prophetic visions, or heard God speaking, or heard angels speaking, and their lives completely changed overnight from nothing they thought their life was going to be. And all of what you're talking about, that pushback, really happened when they decided to put their faith into action, and they started speaking about what God had told them, or what their service was, or doing their service. That's really when the dark pushes back. And I always tell people, when I talk to one-on-ones, or I teach a class, I always say, you can't be angry about it, because I'm going to go back to the sharks, Father Bob. The sharks belong in the ocean too. We don't like that they're there, but they belong there. And as the light belongs here, the darkness belongs here too. It's part of the package. The best thing you can do is protect yourself against it, stay away from it. And if you do get near it, just do the best you can to repel it with your own inner strength, and by channeling, God, or Archangel Michael, or Archangel Raphael, or whoever you want to call in, whatever saints that you follow, and just keep yourself strong. But I can never promise to anybody that there's ever going to be a day when there's not going to be darkness in the universe, because it's probably always going to be here, right?
Correct. And that's reality. I mean, just in our own lives, even the minor types of demonic activity, like temptation, like
Yes.
sometimes we're tempted to do the wrong thing.
Yes.
And that's, people don't realize that it's not a major thing. It's not like you're possessed or anything, but you're choosing to do something from that the dark side would want you to do, and that's reality. But I agree with you that if people have a good spiritual life, and they're keeping themselves strong in that spiritual life, and you don't have to worry, and you don't have to worry about being possessed and doing all of that, and you shouldn't be, because there's two opposite extremes out there today. There's those who see the devil behind every corner,
Yeah. Yeah.
so the devil is everything, or those who don't believe that he exists either
Yeah.
at all. It's just part of your mind or whatever. And both of those are dangerous. So we need to be grounded in the middle and have a good, healthy spiritual life, a good, healthy living, in all areas, of our life, body, mind, and soul, spirit. And if we do that, then we don't have to be paranoid. And when we run into the negative, then we know how to handle it. You know,
Yes. Yes. It's very true. Yeah. And
it's
you have
balance.
to really believe it, right? I mean, you can't just, like they say in the New Age community, you can't just talk the talk. You have to walk the walk. So it's great if you
Right,
want to go to church. It's great if you don't want to go to church. It's great if you want to, read the Bible, or whatever your book is, your holy book is. It's great if you want to pray, or say prayers out loud, or go to confession. All those things are great. But sometimes people do all those things, but in their heart of hearts, they're not engaged. They're not believing it. They're not
right,
to themselves. You have to actually really live the life of a
right,
person who's connected to spirit. Because otherwise it doesn't work. You can't just say, oh, well, I go to church, I'm fine. Uh,
right, right.
it's not that easy.
Yeah, there was a scene in one of my favorite horror movies called Salem's Lot.
Okay,
And
absolutely.
okay, now they're around the kitchen table. There's a priest there, and then that guy comes in who really scared the heck out of me. That demon or vampire,
Yeah,
whatever it was,
Arlo.
Mr.
Uh-huh.
Barlow. Yeah, and then he puts the cross up, and so he goes, and then James Mason goes, stand back, holy man, and all this. And then he said, I want you to pit your faith against the master's. And so he holds the cross up. He said, take that away. And he goes, but I'm a priest. He goes, you're a priest. And then you see the hand of Mr. Barlow taking the cross and crunkling it. And I
Yeah,
thought that was such a great teaching,
yeah,
that without faith, that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And you should be able to, with faith, be able to do that,
Yeah.
withstand that.
Yes. Yes. And I think that we are sometimes misled, sometimes in our life in organized religion, where as people are, this is a human thing across the board, right? If you take these steps, you'll be fine. And it, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? If you're in recovery, if you just get sober, you'll be fine. If you just go to church every day, you'll be fine. If you just say this prayer, you'll be fine. That's a start, and that's wonderful, but you
Hmm.
have to actually, in your soul and in your heart, in your mind, body, and spirit, right, Father Bob, you have
Yep.
to believe that, and you have to
Yes.
be not just a devotee of whatever religion or whatever communities you belong to, but really of God and also of you. You have to
Right.
believe in you. That's the first step to building your inner strength is you have to believe in you. And
Right.
sometimes people say, how come I never fall in love really with the right people? I'm like, because you're not in love with you. If you don't love you, other people will reflect that. And that's why it's so important that we build up our inner strength, and
Right.
we are all tested every day, right? Almost
Mhm.
every day in your life you run into somebody who is spiritually compromised or emotionally compromised, or for whatever reason is taking their bad childhood experiences out on you, and you have to find a way to move through it and not let it eat you alive. And because there's good work for us all to do, and all of that is just a distraction from the good work, right? When people become associated with demons, whether it's, oppression, or I mean anything short of possession, because once they get possessed, then that's a whole nother problem. But what that demonic energy is doing is it's distracting them from their work on the earth. It's distracting them from doing God's work. It's taking them out of the equation so their light can't be felt by everyone.
Absolutely.
And it sometimes picks out the ones that are the most needed, because the more darkness can suppress the light, the more hold it has.
Right. Right. Yep.
Yeah. What are you what are you loving now? I mean, I know you said your health has slowed you down from doing a lot of things, but I know it hasn't slowed you down from your inner work.
No.
Um, what are you very passionate about spiritually right now?
I think what I'm passionate about now is prayer, is entering into authentic and deep prayer,
Mm.
because I think it's a key to life. It's a key for myself. It keeps me grounded, and I have much more time now to pray than I did before, because I could pray, but I also have my activities I had to do, and now I have much more time to work on my interior self. So that's
Yeah,
that's one of the big.
that's nice. That's nice. And you talked about obviously Archangel Michael's prayer.
Yes.
What else do you like as far as protecting yourself from darkness? What other prayers are you a
Yes. I not only the prayer to Saint Michael, the rosary for me is huge. Um, I'm a big devotee of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and so she and also Saint Joseph, call them the terror of demons, and so I invoke them, the Divine Mercy Chaplet. Um, those are the kind of the ones that I use, and then there's some other prayers also that I use. I use some in Latin, because for some reason it's powerful in doing spiritual warfare. I don't know
Sure,
fully why, but
sure.
it I remember one thing when I was on Paranormal State, and I was doing a little bit of it, and the guy who was not possessed, but he was oppressed, he kept barking at me to stop the Latin. I went, no. I just kept, so
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Isn't that interesting? For me, when there is spiritual attack or compromise, ma'am, the Lord's Prayer. I got to tell you,
Oh yeah.
the Lord's Prayer
Yep.
will pull you out of so much when something is trying to get to you. I don't know what it is about the Lord's Prayer. And I'm not a kid that was raised going to church every week. My mother was very kind of half a metaphysician and half what she called a Teachings of Christ Christian. Very, very respectful of God and Jesus Christ, but we weren't always in church and we weren't always saying prayers at home. But I got to tell you, the Lord's Prayer, if you want something to leave you alone that's not good, you just start repeating the Lord's Prayer over and over again. And I do it while I hug a crystal, because that's both sides of my upbringing together. But there is something about the Lord's Prayer that, man, it's like medicine.
And that's part of the rosary too, is the Lord's Prayer between each mystery that we say. So it's done 6 times in the rosary. So the other thing is, I've learned the Psalms, the Bible.
Yeah.
Psalm 91, Psalm 23 is I think that's the most beloved and well known. The Lord is my shepherd; I shall not want. That's a prayer of protection too, a prayer of confidence.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell people that, when I deal with them and they're feeling something at home in their homes, I say pray Psalm 91, Psalm 23, and Psalm 121.
Okay.
And I said just repeat those.
Okay.
Because they're powerful.
Okay. You know what? I'm going to write that down. 91 and 123, you said.
No, 23.
Okay.
And then 121. It's the famous. It was sort of referred to in The Sound of Music when the Mother Abbess had Julie Andrews sending her out, and she said, "Remember, I lift my eyes to the mountains." And she goes, "Yes, Mother." And that was the whole thing. I lift my eyes to the mountains, from whence shall come my help. And it's a beautiful prayer.
That's beautiful.
And where I was in the seminary, we had a mountain called Mary's Mountain, and there was a huge image of her up there that looked over the whole valley. And so that psalm came alive in that for me.
How long have you been a priest? When did you join?
30 years ago.
Okay. So you had some secular life before.
Yes. Yep.
And but even in that time you were a person of faith?
Yes, always.
Because you strike me as somebody who was always a priest even before you were a priest.
Yeah, you ask my friends and family, they would tell you that. I used to play mass when I was a kid. See, I had a cousin who was a priest. My mother's first cousin was a priest, and so he had and my grandparents next door who were Italian. There were always prayers, devotions, and stuff. So I just saw all of that, and got absorbed into it.
Yeah, that's right. Because not only are we both New Englanders, but we're both Irish Italians.
Yes.
We got
so
we got it all happening, except we're reversed, because I got the Irish on mom's side and the Italian on my father's side.
Right.
Yeah, it's an interesting combination. It certainly is. I think one of the things about being Irish or Italian, so when you're both, it's like times 100, is a strong draw to faith.
Yeah.
And
a strong will.
and a strong will, fiery temper, and lots of passion. We're very passionate.
Yes.
And I think if you're going to devote your life to spiritual service in whatever that looks like to you, you have to be passionate about it, because it is a lot of work and it is a responsibility. And like, if I'm at a party with a bunch of people and somebody's falling apart, I feel like it's my duty to go sit down next to them and talk to them till they're okay. Other people just dance and drink and do their thing, and I'm like, nah, I got to save the person who's in crisis. And I'm not resentful of that, because I would want my life to be nothing else, and I love it. But it takes a certain kind of, you always have to have an eye and an ear on the world, right, to see if anybody needs help.
Yep.
It's like,
and I think that I think that the Latino culture and the Portuguese culture have that same type of passion too.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, my mom used to say that the Irish were Mexicans that couldn't tan. So,
Yeah.
as a matter of fact, I always tell this story. I'll tell you the story really quick before we go. When I was in my band, when I was playing with my band in my 20s and 30s, I had this backup singer who was Irish. She was from this big family of Irish musicians. So every time there was a party, they would all get together and play an instrument. And we used to laugh because when she had a party, the Mexican neighbors would call the police on her. And I was like, okay,
Oh,
your party's out of control when the Mexican family next door calls the cops. So I think
oh yeah.
that's kind of being Irish, right? And I think we also have that thing that the Latin cultures have and the Italians have about family is everything.
Mhm.
And that's 100%.
You've been to an Irish wake.
Oh God, yes, the biggest party in town. I threw one for my mother.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I was brought up going to Italian wakes, until my first Irish wake when someone on the Irish side, I was scandalized at first. It's like, this is supposed to be happening. Somebody died, and then you learn
Yep.
it's just different ways of responding.
Yep. That was my mother's only request when she was passing. I don't want a funeral. I don't want an obituary. Nothing that's depressing. I just want you to throw a party. And for some reason, she thought funerals and obituaries were depressing and they were sad. And she didn't want that. None of that. Oh, and also don't bury me in the ground and don't throw me in the ocean. Those were the other two things. Don't you dare throw me in that dark ocean. But
Oh no, not with sharks.
so now I just kind of scatter her around the country when I see something she would like. So if you ever go to Graceland, I snuck a little bit of Mom there. If you ever go to Hank Williams' grave, I snuck a little bit of Mom there. I bring her places and I scatter. But yeah, that was it. No funeral. I do not want anyone to be depressed. And
Mhm.
so I threw a wake. And yeah, I got to tell you, it was a party. So it's
That's it.
it's awesome. I love when you're here, my friend. Let's do this again soon. And
Okay.
I know you're not really available online. Are you at all now?
Online?
I mean, you have Facebook, or do you follow people you don't know on? Do you friend people on Facebook, or?
Well, I get so many people on Facebook. It's like that if I don't know them, it's tough.
Yeah, I
But
know.
I try my best. It's just I'm limited now. I think whenever something happens and like I go onto a show or something, people think I am the old Father Bob, and I'm not health wise or anything else.
Sure.
Just I can't travel like I used to.
I get it. Some people need help. You're wonderful, my friend. I hope you'll continue to come here. I would love that.
That'd be great. Always nice to be with
You
you.
too, my friend. I appreciate. Thanks to Father Bob Bailey, and thanks to my KGRA Digital Broadcast Network, my wonderful program director Bill Forte, and my fantastic engineer and producer Emery, who is the wind beneath my wings. If you want more info on me, SheenaMetalSpiritual.com. And everywhere on social media at Sheena Metal. And please stay in touch. Send me a text message. My number is above 818-437-0886. That's my private cell. I'm crazy and I'll take as many text messages as I can get. And I love to hear from you. Until I see you next time, seek peace, live in love, lead with kindness, embrace unity, always work to raise your vibration, and know that you are love and you are loved and you're so loved by me. And I'll see you next time. I'm Sheena. This is the Sheena Metal Experience. Next Friday at 3:00 Pacific, we'll be back right here on KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. Stay beautiful.